if any of Biden's advisors or whatever are listening, they should consider this as a very serious threat. We should not allow economic royalists, as FDR said, to play games with people's lives in this way.
We have been kind of, we haven't been following this story super closely, but we've been keeping an eye on it, right? And that story is about Nippon, the Japanese steel company, attempting to purchase U.S. steel. Of course, the United Steelworkers have been opposed to the purchase of U.S. steel by Nippon, and many politicians, bipartisan, Republicans and Democrats, have been opposed to Nippon purchasing U.S. steel, varyingly along, for so-called national security issues or for like wage and working condition type issues. And on the latter, Nippon has not been making it easy on people who care about the working conditions of people at U.S. Steel to agree to the deal, because even as they say we will respect any existing contracts that workers have with U.S. Steel, they are not. They have made no commitments to continue to negotiate in good faith, to continue to renew contracts, to continue to respect and recognize the union and continue to make investments in the United States or anything like that. They're just not making commitments like that. And so it very much makes sense that on those grounds, the workers of U.S. Steel, represented by the United Steelworkers, have been opposed to the deal. And just last week, President Biden announced that he would oppose the sale. He will not allow the sale to go through. That was his announcement last week. It was a pretty had a lot of finality to it, more or less saying, the conversations are done. I'm not going to allow this sale to go through on national security grounds is what Biden was leaning on there. And this from the American Prospect, although this has been reported elsewhere, but this language is coming from the American Prospect. Harold Meyerson wrote a piece on it. As news of the Biden administration's rejection of the Nippon bid became public yesterday, U.S. Steel CEO David Burritt lashed out at the union, threatening to close the company's last remaining Pittsburgh mill, transfer the work to its new non-union mill in Arkansas, and also move its headquarters, which has anchored Pittsburgh's business community since 1901, to the non-union South as well. The last threat appears to be Burritt's way of retaliating against Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro as well, who, like virtually every political leader in the region, opposed the pending sale to Nippon. Now, this is blackmail, frankly, because we are not talking here about, we're going to be making these decisions because it is necessary. There's not even a pretense from David Burritt, the U.S. Steel CEO. There's not even a pretense of saying, if we do not move our work from the last remaining mill in Pittsburgh that U.S. Steel has to a non-union mill in Arkansas, the company will go bankrupt. There's no even pretense of that. It is completely in retaliation for the right concern of workers and political leaders in Pennsylvania and across the country about the ramifications of a sale to a foreign company of, a real institution in the United States, U.S. Steel, right? There is correct concern about that. And there is not even being made a pretense of saying that this is about economics or the necessity of the business. It's just totally retaliation against the union and political leaders in the communities that have given their lives, have formed themselves around this institution, saying that we will do everything we can to destroy the economic life of a community because we are not getting our way and because I'm not going to be made a little bit more rich. Blackmail, economic terrorism, as maybe Teamsters President Sean O'Brien would say. It should not be tolerated. And frankly, if there are any moves made in this direction by U.S. Steel, the United States government should nationalize it. We should not allow people like this, powerful millionaires or billionaires. I don't know if David Burritt has $1 billion or not, but we should not allow people like him to single-handedly threaten the economic life of an entire community, of an entire country, because he is not getting his way. And because the line is not going to go up as high for him. We should nationalize it. We should take over as a government, U.S. Steel, and the government should run it. We can do this through the Defense Production Act. We can do this through various other national security concerns. Probably what would happen if something like this were to ever be proposed is that the shareholders would be compensated at a fair market rate for their shares in U.S. Steel. But frankly, for people like David Burritt, for anybody on the executive board of U.S. Steel, we should. I would say that we should not reimburse them at a fair market rate for their shares in U.S. Steel. We should just expropriate it and take it and not give them anything for it, and say that you're lucky that for your threats of blackmail and economic terrorism that you do not get jail time, right? I mean, that should be the deal. You don't get anything, you're welcome for existing in this country and profiting off of the labor of hundreds of thousands of steel workers across the country and across the decades. We should just take it. The U.S. government runs several institutions and runs them well, contrary to the consistent cries of conservatives. The United States Postal Service can get a letter across the country for 67 cents. And prior to Trump appointee Louis DeJoy was able to do it for 50 cents.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
There's several institutions that the U.S. government and various state and municipalities run and run well. We could obviously do something like this. The only thing that's stopping it is the political imagination and people, it's just not being put out there. So I want to put it out there. I want to, if any of Biden's handlers or advisors or whatever are listening, they should consider this as a very serious threat. And they should execute on it. Because we should not allow economic royalists, as FDR said, to play games with people's lives in this way. It just should not be allowed. And so that's what we should do about it. We should nationalize it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I also just want to point out the issue where the non-union South, yet again,
right.
The South is being used as a bastion for, this kind of reactionary garbage. And, the South is being used as a refuge to run away from unions. In this race to the bottom to exploit workers, to pay lower wages, less benefits, less rights, less protections. And, so that's part of, I think, what motivates me, and I hope motivates a lot of folks who are listening, is, we can't allow the South to be that way.
Right.
As long as the South is that refuge for, greedy capitalists like this guy, it's going to continue to drag the whole country down.
Yeah.
And we suffer along with everyone else. So, I saw a comment in the chat, we need to unionize the place in Arkansas.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We absolutely do. And that has to be part of the problem, or part of the plan, is organizing in the South so that these kind of threats are a little bit emptier. Right, because this is not a new idea.
Right.
A lot of the manufacturing and industry that we have in the South that has relocated here over the past few decades, was running away from unions and running away from organizations. So we have got to address that. But yeah, to your broader point, I totally agree. I think there's plenty of rationale where it makes sense. And, it's important to the country and to the economy. So I think we all have a vested interest.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to be nationalization. We could just give ownership over to the workers as well. Look, I'm a moderate. I can be persuaded. Nationalization or worker ownership, those are the options that I would propose in response to the blackmail and terrorism of
right.
Of
Let them choose between the two. Right. We love choice.
Or we could even go a third way and give 50% of the ownership to the workers and 50% to the United States government.
Wow. Now you're talking a lot of choice.
Yes.
That's one more choice than we typically have for things, at least for president, right? But so, yeah, that's interesting. I'm down for it. Yeah, put it on the table. It would be nice if we had politicians that were, advocates of policies like that, advocates of taking on big capital in a way that would empower working people. We'll see.
And then once we do that, once we take over U.S. Steel by one avenue or another, or both, worker ownership or nationalization, we should invest in the quote-unquote non-union South. But we should do it with good-paying union jobs instead of exploiting Southern workers as a threat against Northern and Western and Midwestern workers. We should do it in a spirit of cooperation. We should invest in the South, in economically impoverished regions in the South, and we should continue to invest in the people who made and sacrificed for U.S. Steel for the entirety of its existence. Gosh, getting tongue-tied in Pittsburgh. We should do all of it, and we should invest in the latest state-of-the-art kind of technology to make the work less dreary, and we should we should redound the benefits of that technology and automation once it's nationally owned to the workers, instead of making those benefits go to the profits of people like David Burritt. And by the way, while we're talking about it, I've been reading some about the history of the steel industry in the United States. And, contra whatever you hear about the workers were the ones that, are responsible for the decline of the U.S. Steel and the United States steel industry writ large. Actually, the business journals of the time typically did not blame the workers. They blamed the business and management practices of the notoriously conservative U.S. Steel. And I say conservative temperamentally, not as in like politically they vote Republican. Conservative as in they did not want to make capital investments, which I'm always told capital investment and risk is the whole reason that we give these people the profits of other folks' labor, is because they make risks in capital investment, and the people in charge of the U.S. steel industry refused to make these capital investments. Instead of investing in the latest state-of-the-art technologies and automation and things like this, they just built more factories that were already obsolete by global standards when they were built in the 1940s and 50s and 60s, right? And so that is a big reason, because once we passed, obviously passing NAFTA in and of itself was bad, but once NAFTA was passed and the U.S. steel industry was no longer so insulated from the rest of global steel production, it was no longer even remotely competitive, not because of the wages, or at least not majorly because of the wages and benefits that workers got, but because it just took more time to make steel in the U.S. because of the refusal of the capitalists to invest, which is funny. And that's actually typically what you see when any time I have ever heard of, the unions killed this industry. Anytime I've ever heard of that and I've actually taken the time to look, that it's not true. It's just straight up it's a lie.
Turns out not everyone's good at business.
Yeah.
And just because you have a business doesn't make you successful at it at the long term, right? Some people think that you have this right to sit on your business forever and ever, and we're supposed to be shocked, shocked and surprised and saddened when a business closes. But yeah, I mean, to your point, sometimes industry kills industry.
Yeah. Exactly.
Sometimes their own mismanagement, their lack of forward thinking, their lack of future minded investments, their lack of taking care of their own workforce, all sorts of issues. Just all sorts of issues can arise. But yeah, I'm with you. I've never encountered a situation where you could say, yep, it was those greedy union workers that killed this industry. As soon as you scratch beneath the surface of that BS rhetoric, you find out that that is not really the case.
Right.
And so, yeah, I totally agree.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.